When life becomes unbearable, most people do the only thing they were ever taught to do: try to escape the pain. They numb it, suppress it, hide from it, distract themselves, or attempt to outrun it, as if distance could dissolve what hurts. But pain does not disappear when we reject it. It buries itself deeper. It grows in the dark. And the strategies that promise relief often become the very mechanisms that keep the wound open. Buddhism approaches suffering through a different doorway. It does not declare pain to be the enemy. It says the real enemy is the way the mind relates to pain, through resistance, through fear, through denial, and through the frantic attempt to control what cannot be controlled. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is multiplied by the mind's refusal to let pain exist. And this misunderstanding is the primary reason so many lives feel heavier than they should. There is a way forward when life hurts too much, but it begins in a direction most people never consider, toward the pain, not away from it. This is not about embracing sadness or romanticizing struggle. It is about learning to suffer skillfully instead of chaotically. By the end of this video, you may realize that the problem was never that life hurts. The problem is that no one ever taught you how to meet pain without collapsing under it. Lesson 1. Pain versus suffering. Most people believe that pain and suffering are the same thing. When something hurts, they assume suffering is the automatic consequence. But this is one of the deepest misunderstandings in the human mind. Pain is built into existence. Suffering is constructed by the mind. The two are not the same, and Buddhism draws a very sharp line between them. In Buddhist psychology, this distinction is described through the metaphor of the two arrows. The first arrow is life itself. Illness, loss, rejection, disappointment, aging, conflict, change, none of these can be entirely avoided. They are woven into the structure of existence. The first arrow hurts, but it is universal. Nobody escapes it because nobody is exempt from being alive. The second arrow, however, is self-inflicted. It is the mental reaction layered on top of the original pain. It includes rumination, catastrophizing, resentment, self-blame, fantasies of how things should have been, and the desperate struggle to force reality to cooperate with our preferences. The second arrow is not delivered by the world. It is delivered by the mind. And strangely, it often hurts far more than the first. Suffering arises when the mind refuses to let pain exist. It argues with reality, replaying events, tightening identity around wounds, inventing stories, and predicting worst-case futures. Someone betrays us, and the mind declares, "I will never trust again." A plan fails, and the mind concludes, "I am a failure." A moment hurts, and the mind writes a lifetime narrative around it. The pain didn't create that suffering. The story did. Training begins by noticing the moment the second arrow appears. When something hurts, pause and ask, what is actually here, and what is the mind adding on top? This simple inquiry reduces the internal burden immediately. Pain cannot always be avoided, but suffering decreases the moment we stop multiplying it. That shift alone makes life lighter, clearer, and far more workable. Lesson 2. Turning toward the pain. When life hurts, the natural impulse is to pull away. The nervous system treats discomfort like a predator, and the mind believes escape is the only safe strategy. People distract themselves, suppress emotions, dissociate, indulge in fantasies, or drown discomfort in pleasure and noise. These reactions promise relief, but they silently train the mind to fear its own experience. Over time, avoidance does not protect life from pain. It makes life smaller. Buddhism offers a radically different path. It teaches the mindful practice of staying with discomfort without collapsing into it. This is called meeting dukkha with awareness. Pain arises, and instead of sprinting away from it, the practitioner investigates it directly. Where is it located in the body? How does it change from moment to moment? What thoughts try to attach to it? What stories the mind tries to build? This contact with discomfort builds capacity the same way progressive exercise builds muscle. Avoidance, however, works like reverse training. The more a person escapes, the more sensitive and fragile the mind becomes. A small discomfort feels catastrophic. A mild uncertainty becomes intolerable. What could have been processed in minutes turns into weeks of mental noise. The world shrinks, not because life got harder, but because the mind abandoned its own inner territory. The training is simple, but not easy. Allow pain in small increments, just long enough for the nervous system to discover it can survive contact. This might be 5 extra seconds of sitting with anxiety before picking up the phone for distraction. It might be letting sadness rise and fall in the chest without immediately numbing it. With each tiny exposure, the nervous system recalibrates. Fear decreases. Stability increases. As this gate develops, pain stops being a force that overwhelms. It becomes a sensation that can be observed, understood, and eventually integrated. Turning toward discomfort does not eliminate pain from life. It transforms pain from an enemy into a teacher, and in doing so, expands the range of life that the mind can hold without breaking. Lesson 3. Expecting life to be hard. One of the most powerful sources of suffering is not pain itself, but the quiet belief that life should not contain pain at all. Modern culture has conditioned many people to assume that happiness is the default state and that discomfort is a malfunction. When difficulty appears, the mind responds with shock, protest, and confusion. This creates a secondary layer of suffering that often exceeds the original difficulty. Buddhist philosophy begins in a different place. It starts by acknowledging the first noble truth that dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness, is woven into existence itself. Bodies age, relationships change, plans falter, health fluctuates, and conditions shift without permission. This does not mean life is bleak or hopeless. It simply means that difficulty is not a personal failure. It is part of being alive. When a person expects life to be easy, every obstacle becomes devastating. Ordinary setbacks feel catastrophic. Small disappointments become existential crises. The mind collapses, not because the moment is unbearable, but because the moment contradicts its fantasy of how life should unfold. This unrealistic expectation quietly deteriorates resilience. It trains the nervous system to treat discomfort as an anomaly rather than a natural dimension of experience. The training here is not passive resignation. It is the deliberate replacement of protest with recognition. Instead of asking why this is happening, the practitioner begins to observe that difficulty is part of being alive. Illness, loss, conflict, and uncertainty are not punishments. They are part of the fabric of existence. This perspective removes the shock and restores energy that was previously spent on fighting reality. Real resilience is built through realism, not through fantasy. A person who expects life to always cooperate becomes fragile. A person who accepts that life contains both joy and difficulty becomes capable. When challenges arise, they no longer interpret them as signs that something has gone wrong. They see them as conditions to navigate rather than as verdicts on their worth or destiny. As this lesson matures, despair gives way to steadiness. The world does not become kinder, but the mind becomes less wounded by its unpredictability. When difficulty is expected, it loses its ability to destabilize. Pain remains, but the collapse around pain decreases dramatically. This shift alone can change the entire architecture of how a person moves through life. Lesson 4. Seeing impermanence in the middle of pain. When we are inside pain, it does not feel temporary. It feels final. It feels permanent. The nervous system interprets intense present states as if they will continue indefinitely. Sadness feels endless. Anxiety feels unescapable. Heartbreak feels terminal. The mind loses perspective and collapses the future into the present moment. This collapse creates a powerful illusion, the illusion of permanence. Buddhism offers a corrective through the principle of anicca, the teaching that all conditioned states arise, change, and pass away. Nothing holds its shape forever. Emotions, identities, relationships, beliefs, sensations, and even entire worlds of meaning shift over time. Impermanence does not promise that life will always feel good. It reveals that no state, pleasant or painful, has the authority to last. This perspective alone weakens the tyranny of despair. The nervous system does not naturally perceive impermanence. Its priority is survival, not philosophical insight. When discomfort becomes intense, the survival system freezes the horizon. It treats the current moment as the blueprint for all future moments. A person in grief feels as if they will grieve forever. A person in anxiety feels as if calm will never return. A person in failure believes success is out of reach for the rest of their life. None of these conclusions reflect reality. They reflect a mind overwhelmed by immediacy. The training here is deceptively simple. Look for what is changing instead of what is stuck. In the middle of pain, scan for movement. Notice how sensations shift in the body. Observe how thoughts come and go. Track how emotions rise, crest, and dissolve. Pay attention to how mornings feel different from evenings, how one week differs from the next, how time itself carries everything forward. Small evidence of change is enough to dismantle the illusion of permanence. As this lesson matures, hopelessness begins to loosen. Pain stops being interpreted as destiny. A new kind of relief becomes available, not because the discomfort disappears instantly, but because it no longer occupies the entire future. The person discovers that what feels unbearable today may be workable tomorrow. Impermanence does not erase difficulty, but it ensures that difficulty does not become a prison. Nothing stays as it is. That truth is a quiet form of freedom. Lesson 5. Separating the self from the pain. When pain enters life, it rarely stays confined to the moment or to the body. The mind absorbs it, interprets it, and often fuses it with identity. A brief period of suffering becomes not just something that is happening, but something a person believes they are. The statement "I am in pain" quietly evolves into "I am broken," and the nervous system behaves accordingly. This fusion is one of the fastest paths to despair. Buddhist psychology warns about this collapse through the lens of anatta, the teaching that the self is not a fixed, permanent, or independent entity. Thoughts arise from causes and conditions. Emotions arise from causes and conditions. Experiences arise from causes and conditions. None of them constitute a fundamental self. They are processes, not identities. But modern minds are conditioned to personalize everything. Sadness becomes a character flaw. Anxiety becomes a personal weakness. Failure becomes a permanent label. When suffering is fused with identity, it becomes harder to heal, because the person is no longer trying to resolve an experience. They are trying to fix themselves. This creates a heavy and unnecessary burden. Instead of allowing pain to move, they hold it tightly as evidence of who they are. The result is stagnation, shame, and a shrinking sense of possibility. The training here is subtle but transformative. Shift language from identity to observation. Replace I am suffering with suffering is present. Replace I am anxious with anxiety is arising. Replace I am broken with pain is moving through me. This shift may seem small, but it changes everything. Language shapes perception, and perception shapes identity. When suffering becomes an experience rather than a definition, the mind gains space to work with it. As space increases, pain begins to lose its authority. It stops dictating destiny. It stops defining character. It stops collapsing the future. It becomes what it always was, a temporary state, moving through a temporary being. Pain that was once personalized becomes depersonalized, and in that depersonalization, freedom begins to emerge. Separating the self from the pain does not deny the reality of suffering. It restores accuracy. The person is not broken. They are experiencing pain. And experiences, unlike identities, move and change. This simple distinction prevents suffering from becoming a prison and transforms it back into something the mind can hold without losing itself. Lesson 6. Dropping control as a strategy. When life becomes painful, the mind instinctively tries to regain control. It strategizes, negotiates, analyzes, and attempts to force the world back into alignment with its expectations. This impulse is not irrational, it is rooted in survival. The nervous system believes that by controlling external conditions, it can reduce discomfort and restore safety. But there is a problem. Most of the forces that shape human experience are not within personal control. And when the mind fights uncontrollable realities, suffering increases. Control attempts operate like a hyperactive defense system. The nervous system tightens, attention narrows, and energy becomes consumed by monitoring possibilities and eliminating threats. Over time, this creates exhaustion. The person is not only dealing with the original difficulty, but also with the internal chaos produced by trying to force life into submission. The effort becomes heavier than the situation itself. Buddhism addresses this through the principle of right effort. It does not tell the practitioner to abandon action or resign to fate. It teaches something far more intelligent: direct energy toward what can actually be influenced, and release the futile struggle against what cannot. This distinction preserves energy, increases clarity, and makes life workable. It shifts the mind from desperation to discernment. The training begins by separating life into 3 domains. The first is what you control directly. This includes actions, speech, choices, attention, and habits. These domains respond to consistent cultivation. The second is what you influence indirectly. Relationships, opportunities, reputation, health outcomes, and external processes belong here. Influence is possible, but not guaranteed. The third domain contains what must be surrendered: timing, other people's decisions, illness, impermanence, weather, aging, and the larger movements of life cannot be forced to obey. When these domains are confused, suffering increases. People try to control other people's emotions instead of managing their own communication. They try to control timing instead of preparing for opportunity. They try to control uncertainty instead of strengthening tolerance for it. This misallocation of effort leads to frustration, resentment, and burnout. The nervous system becomes chronically activated because it is fighting battles that cannot be won. When the domains are properly distinguished, a shift happens. Energy that was once spent on resistance becomes available for action. Instead of replaying events that cannot be changed, the person adapts. Instead of demanding life to cooperate, they adjust their posture. Instead of collapsing into helplessness, they discover areas where influence still exists. The nervous system relaxes not through escaping difficulty, but through aligning effort with reality. Dropping control as a strategy does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming precise. The person stops leaking energy into the impossible and begins investing it into the effective. As this lesson matures, life stops feeling like a battle against the universe. It becomes a dialogue. Resistance fades, capacity grows, and pain loses much of its power, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because the mind no longer wastes itself trying to command what was never under its authority in the first place. Lesson 7. Rebuilding from the next step. When life hurts deeply, the mind makes a dangerous mistake. It believes the only way forward is to fix everything at once. Debt, heartbreak, illness, shame, exhaustion, or failure appear all at the same time in the nervous system, and the mind responds by demanding total transformation. It wants instant clarity, instant healing, instant success, instant meaning, but total transformation is impossible under such conditions. The demand for total change becomes another weight that pushes the person further down, rather than helping them rise. Buddhism offers a far more humane view, known as the path view. In this framing, life changes through practice, not epiphany. The path is built through small adjustments repeated over time, rather than through a single dramatic event. This view removes the fantasy of instant redemption and replaces it with a workable method that does not require the world to cooperate before progress can begin. The nervous system responds exceptionally well to small wins. A single action that re-establishes agency can interrupt helplessness. A single routine can interrupt chaos. A single behavior can interrupt despair. When the mind is overwhelmed, what it needs is not a grand plan, but a foothold. A foothold creates movement. Movement builds momentum, and momentum rebuilds identity. The training here is simple in concept, but profound in impact. Reduce life down to the next actionable step. One step, one routine, one behavior, one day. This dismantles the illusion that everything must be solved immediately. It opens a small doorway through which energy can begin to return. This is how warriors, monks, and seasoned practitioners have rebuilt themselves for centuries, not through dramatic awakenings, but through consistent steps taken even when the heart is heavy and the path is unclear. As these steps accumulate, something important happens internally. Identity begins to shift. The person moves from being someone who breaks under pressure to someone who keeps walking regardless of conditions. This shift is not motivational rhetoric, it is a psychological reorganization. The nervous system forms evidence that it can participate in life again. Helplessness slowly dissolves as competence returns. Small steps also protect the mind from perfectionism. Instead of demanding flawless outcomes, the person learns to honor participation. Instead of demanding certainty, they learn to tolerate process. Instead of waiting for everything to align, they begin where they are. These are the characteristics of durable resilience. As this lesson matures, pain does not vanish, but it loses its ability to paralyze. The world stops feeling like a collapsing structure and becomes a terrain that can be navigated one section at a time. The future stops being something the person fears and becomes something they can influence. The one who keeps walking is not necessarily the strongest. They are simply the one who refuses to stop moving. Life does not stop hurting simply because we turn away from pain. Avoidance may provide temporary relief, but it multiplies the wound beneath the surface. It is only when we learn to suffer without adding layers of resistance, panic, and storytelling that pain stops overwhelming the mind. This skill does not remove difficulty from life. It changes the relationship with difficulty so that pain becomes something to navigate rather than something to fear. Strength has never been the absence of hardship. Strength is the capacity to remain intact while hardship moves through. This kind of strength is quiet, steady, and uninformative. It does not require heroic displays or dramatic victories. It emerges through clarity, through acceptance, through patience, through contact with reality as it is. The strongest minds are not the ones that never break. They are the ones that learn how to bend without losing themselves. The person who turns toward pain becomes harder to discourage because they are no longer controlled by fear of discomfort. They do not collapse when life refuses to cooperate. They do not assume that difficulty means something is wrong. They understand that suffering is part of the human condition and that the real training lies in how one meets it. Pain still hurts, but it no longer defines destiny. It becomes a teacher rather than a threat. In the middle of hardship, do not demand yourself to rebuild an entire life. Do not rush to solve every problem at once or to repair every broken piece on the same day. Take the next step that keeps you facing forward. One step, one routine, one choice, one sunrise at a time. This pace is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is how monks, warriors, and ordinary people have endured for centuries. If this way of walking resonates with you, stay close. There is more to learn, more to integrate, and more to practice. The path is quiet, but it leads far. And the person who commits to it does not become unbreakable through force or defiance. They become unbreakable because they no longer abandon themselves in the presence of pain.